Welcome to another episode. This time we are talking about railroads. I brought an expert that has long story with the company, also in the industry. Paul, if you could introduce yourself and the company you represent, we'll kick it off with that.
My name is Paul Hoben. I'm the Director of Business Development for the Aberdeen, Carolina and Western Railway. We're a second generation managed short line railroad in North Carolina. We're 150 miles long. We dual serve, meaning that we interchange with Norfolk Southern in Charlotte, North Carolina, and CSX Transportation in Aberdeen.
And what led you to join the company ACWR?
Well, I was previously a customer of the ACWRs, and just in various lunch meetings and what I was doing with the company I was with before, they effectively said during a lunch meeting, we need somebody just like you. Would you like to come to work for us? And kind of what would it take for you to come to work for us? And so we pounded out an agreement, and my anniversary will be the 30th? Gosh, yeah, it's coming up 7 years into this month, into July. So,
Wow, congrats.
Congrats.
7 years with one company. That shows how they care about their people and the company. What have you done before that, if you can share that?
Before that, I was with a company called Carolina Stay-Lite. It's a lightweight aggregate company, kind of unique in the concrete world. They manufactured lightweight aggregate for the concrete world, all aspects of concrete. I was salesman. Actually, how I got into rail was they needed a transportation manager, and ultimately they needed to create a transportation division. Company had developed a couple of divisions, and they were starting to compete for transportation assets. And they just sat me down and said, Paul, this is what we need. We think you can do it. What do you think? And I took on the challenge, and lo and behold, it provided me opportunity to, make a name for myself on one hand, build a division within the company. Nice. And then ultimately worked my way, up the chain and became sales manager of Stay-Lite. I took the company international, and oh my gosh, I don't know if I could come up with the year, but right off the top of my head, but it was ultimately those stories during lunch with the ACWR of what we were doing, what Stay-Lite was doing, what I was doing, that kind of led me to where I am today. So it's been a fun ride and a good ride for me and my family. So.
Fun ride. That's a good keyword right there. I can tell you've enjoyed the journey so far. As a business developer or as director of business development, take us through your day to day. How do you structure your days, and what are your key performance indicators, if you will?
Well, it's kind of what I found in sort of all aspects of sales, whether it was with Stay-Lite or with the railroad. It's all about building a network, right? And when I took this job, I obviously came from the concrete, aggregate, sand, construction materials world. And so that was kind of where I started. With that, or kind of on the rail side, what we had done with Stay-Lite over the years is I realized what we had to do to sell more material was we had to get it out away from our plant. And the farther the better. And so we developed, we came up with this distribution model of, I called it hub and spoke at the time, but where we would rail out, we would find a transload or a distribution yard that was rail served. We would rail it out, put it on the ground, and then, you'd have your sales guys go out in those particular areas and then sell it. And you just, spoke it out from those distribution. So when I came to the ACWR, the first thing I kind of noticed is that they had a few transloads. They were sort of specific to certain commodities, and there was a lot of opportunity to grow that. And so that was the first thing I did, was established a transload yard in Oakboro, North Carolina. I mean, all the way down from, finding the land, finding the owner, talking them into letting us lease it, and then ultimately buying it. And then, we just kept kind of growing it. So when we got Oakboro done, then we started looking at, okay, who would be a good target for this? So we initially found a scrap steel guy that we brought in, and he did just a huge amount of volume of business. He did one rail car, but it allowed us to get the yard built and get it going. And then we got into some industrial sands and then some aggregates, and then it just sort of started blossoming from there. We decided to take that transload concept, and we built another yard in Midland, which is now the Midland Logistics Park. And it does animal fats, recycled cooking oils, plastics, industrial gases. It does some fuel products. And on all this was a culmination of, networking at specific industry conferences, as well as rail and shipper conferences. Just people, and this kind of just keep churning it, and we're doing well. We built another transload yard in Candor. We have a separate one that is under construction in Candor. It's real, we're real unique. We have Candor West and Candor East. And we're getting ready to break ground on a transload yard in Mint Hill, which is kind of Charlotte, suburb of Charlotte. And so we're really capitalizing on the transload business. In the meantime, we were really fortunate. One, I would say that probably the main part of my position is to recruit industry to come to the railroad, to put their manufacturing operations or distribution operations, build on the railroad. And so, I got to get my years here. And I think it was 2022, Charlotte Pipe decided to move from downtown Charlotte, and they built their brand new operation in Oakboro, North Carolina. Now, I kind of got in on the very, the 11th hour on that. That was actually a negotiation that had been going on for about 10 years, but it has since come to fruition. We were working on, right now, we probably got 8 to 10 projects similar to that. I mean, not somebody moving, but trying to bring companies in. Along with that, though, it's also been, hey, if we want to grow, we need to find real estate that is along our railroad. I mean, you got to have land to do this stuff. And so we have, as a team, our management team, myself, and then in this almost 7-year period, we've brought a real estate person on to help me. We have been identifying properties and purchasing properties and taking steps to improve them to help with those recruitment
Wow. So overall, it sounds like the business is booming, which is amazing, of course. There's decent growth, but maybe some naive question from my end, because that's new to me. I'm surprised to hear that, railroad or railway business is developing, growing in 2025. Why rail when you have such a vast network of essentially ground transportation right now, other forms of transportation that are essentially taking over? Why rail? And do you see this being developed further, like nationwide?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so many different modes of transportation, right? And they all serve sort of a particular niche, is not really the right word, but they all perform a particular task, right? And rail works really well for bulk products that are moving, generally speaking, 100 miles or more. And that 500-mile kind of marker is kind of where rail rates and truck rates sort of split, right? Anything less than 500 miles, trucks have a big advantage pricing wise, and door to door, right? And then rail over 500 miles, that's where, from a rate standpoint, we start to become effective, and there's enough of a gap in there that kind of allows for some additional incremental pricing that's needed to get, because not everybody's on rail, right? That's why these transload yards are such a valuable asset to the railroad, is because there's a lot of companies that didn't think about rail when they built their facilities. And so just to have that facility close to them that you can rail into, put it on a truck and send it to the plant, or even vice versa. The plant has their operations have grown, their markets have grown, and so they need rail access where you can't just pick up and move railroad tracks. They kind of are where they are next to them. Then you got to figure out a different ways. You can also do that transload in reverse. You load it at your plant, load your production up at the plant, bring it to a transload yard, load it on rail cars, and send it to market.
Wow.
Gosh.
Remember, you said it's hard to move. Obviously, we all can imagine how hard it is to move. And it reminded me of a story. And it's not something to brag about, but where I'm from Poland, there was an instance where there was a group of criminals who stole rail and took apart a locomotive and sold it somewhere, essentially all the steel and everything. So I have no idea how they came up with this process and obviously the idea to steal that part of these parts, but they figured they manage it, so it's possible.
Right.
But it was crazy story that I remember made definitely headlines all around Europe back then.
Well, we were talking about kind of the competitive aspect of truck and rail, but even rail and rail, and you might have heard me mention that the ACWR is dual serve. Well, what that means to a customer is if you put your operation on the ACWR, you actually have access to both Norfolk Southern and CSX from your facility. See, a lot of people don't realize that if you build your plant on a Class 1 railroad, right, which is a Norfolk Southern CSX size, you pretty much are only doing business with Norfolk Southern and CSX or CSX. If you're on the Eastern Seaboard. Now, when you go from, say, the East Coast to the West Coast, there's pretty much the junction is the Mississippi River for the Eastern railroads, right? So that you may go Norfolk Southern to the BNSF or the Union Pacific or the Canadian National, pick one, and then you would go the rest of the way to the West Coast. So a dual serve short line like the ACWR offers a customer a competitive advantage then because they get to allow the Class 1s to compete against each other for the business. Norfolk, in this case, in CSX versus a plant that's just purely on the Norfolk Southern.
Yeah, I mean, makes sense.
I sell that advantage every day. That's one of my biggest selling points is just that.
That makes sense, obviously, for the better of the customer. I also saw on your website that you do transport, however it's going to sound, human. There is an entertainment element in the ACWR company, and obviously that brought a lot of cool memories, and I could see how this can be a fantastic corporate event. We had some guests previously that organize a lot of events for their teams where they send them to concerts and organize trips. Like this could be one of the trips I can imagine they would be interested in as well. And it's fantastic for content because it's so different in 21st century. I mean, you don't hear about that all the time. So can you tell us, I'm not sure if this is part of your business, if you arrange that as well, but can you walk us through the entertaining part of ACWR?
Well, it's in the short version, no, I'm not part of our excursion division, but we're such a small company. I mean, we're 50 employees, give or take, right? So we're all intertwined. And I got to start from the beginning, and the beginning is our owner Robert Menzies, who bought the ACWR in 1987. He is a true lover of railroads, and so he loves history, and so over the years he has gone out and he has purchased some of these really old Pullman rail cars from, that are 120, 130 years old and has restored them to period. And so literally when you step on these rail cars, it's like stepping back 120 years in time.
I saw the pictures.
And we initially what we had done is we have built a corporate train and that we have used for economic development and industrial development purposes, right? And we bring legislators, we bring economic development people. We bring potential customers, and we wine and dine them, and show them, basically sell the ACWR. Well, as we continue to build this train out, we've we've just seen an opportunity to how can we maybe leverage, take some of these assets and put them in sort of the public, in sort of the retail world, right? So we have started an excursion division. Started 2 years ago with a Christmas train, and
Wow.
it has moved from a Christmas train. We have a Valentine's train. We have, gosh, I'm here. Why am I drawing? Oh, we have an Easter train. We're now doing like wine tastings. We're currently doing, come on, Paul. It's like a travel in time train where we're bringing people on and just doing bourbon tastings and some wine tastings, and just doing little small excursions. And we've been really pleased with the response. And it's something we currently have kind of kept it. Our railroad runs through Pinehurst and that beautiful golf resort there. And we, the focus has kind of been on that end of the railroad. We are working towards taking it to Charlotte, which is obviously a huge demographic and huge opportunity for us. And we'll get there probably in another year or so.
Wow.
And we're having some fun with it. It's really cool. Last year, the U.S. Open was at Pinehurst, and so we actually we built a brand new dual siding at the resort, and we brought our corporate train in there. And we were literally one step. The practice tees were right out our window, so to speak.
No way.
And it was beautiful. We were there for the whole week of U.S. Open. We entertained some very big customers, Doer Scotch and Century, and oh my God, we had North Carolina. Several North Carolina groups, the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina, did several events, and we really had a good time with that and hope to expand that big time in the future. Yeah, our excursion division is new, it's fledgling, but we're kind of getting it together and getting it underneath us, and it's exciting for the future.
Absolutely. I mean, that can gain some publicity. I mean, you could make headlines all around social media and other forms of media. I mean, I was excited right away of just looking at the picture and taking me back in time. I could imagine myself right away at an event like this that you guys host. So I can't wait it's a good reason to visit North Carolina, or maybe you're going to do both Carolinas as well with that, or you already do. But that's definitely an exciting part. And if you're already doing those events, I mean, that's something definitely to consider.
I can tell you what I tell everybody that comes on the train, and of course we hold a lot of just corporate events, right? And so when people come on the train and they're like, you kind of like, I don't know what it is about trains, but everybody's like a kid, with the, and when they get on, and I tell them all, I said, there's one thing I can promise you about this experience. And they said, what's that? I said, you will never forget it. It'll be something you will never forget that you did before. And especially when we do like a moving dinner train kind of, party or something, it's just a cool experience. And I don't know what it is. If you may not know this. And honest to God, I didn't know this till I came on with the railroad, but there are people in this world that absolutely love trains. I mean, they love them. And so like when we do even a corporate event, somehow in the community around Pinehurst and Pine Wild and all that, these people find out that the train is going to be moving and we're going down the tracks, and there's people taking our pictures and video, and it's like, how in the world do they even know we're here? And it's cool. I mean, it's almost like being in a parade. You're just waving at everybody going by. It's
Yeah,
nice.
I mean, it was when I look back, when I was growing up, transportation by train was very, very common. We were traveling all the time by train. It's still very, very popular in Europe. You can go from one country to another. It's fast, it's convenient, it's comfortable. You have a lot of space, and you can and it's relatively competitive to like flying, and it's much more
Oh, sure.
pleasant than flying. You don't have to go to all of those. You don't have to. First of all, you don't have a tiny seat. You don't have to go through all the checkpoints, and what have you. It's so much fun. So whenever I get a chance, I can't wait to take our 6-month-old to on a train trip one day. But those brings always good memories. I can imagine how your clients and partners are excited when I get on it. I mean, a lot of people probably here never been on a train before, but it's quite fascinating for sure. And I don't know why.
It's and I can tell you, we do have an interest in the future of passenger rail. We have our yard, our interchange yard, Norfolk Southern, literally takes us into Norfolk Southern's yard into downtown Charlotte. So we're the railroad that goes through NODA, North Davidson district or section of Charlotte, and we have talked with CATS, which is the Charlotte Transportation Authority. I don't know exactly what the acronym stands for. And we have told them that we would be interested in talking about passenger rail some point in time in the future. So I can see us in the next 10 so years taking that on too, or at least offering our right of way, our tracks, for that possibility. So that would be a kind of a next step, right? And a next building block in our growth. And that's exciting.
100%. I mean, why not? You read my mind with that, because I was about to make this suggestion. I'm surprised that in the United States you don't. I mean, it was built on railroad. You hear all the stories and history, but then traveling by rail, it's almost like with trains. It's so inconvenient because you have to. I mean, for us, if I wanted to get to LA from here, the closest station is like 30-40 minutes from us, so I might as well just drive to LA and be there in an hour and a half. So it's so inconvenient. Plus, you have now those fast trains. I'm not sure if you ever travel through Europe by train, but they go by like 200 miles per hour, and you don't feel anything. You can walk, feel perfectly fine, and it goes so fast. Like you can travel almost like traveling on a supercar, but you don't feel that the G power there. So it's G force power there. So it's quite impactful.
It's absolutely amazing. Fortunate. I hadn't been here long. First year or two, we got approached by a European company about a possible partnership, joint venture. They were from Italy. They asked us to come visit them in Italy. And so, of course, we rode the train everywhere when we were in Italy. And you're absolutely correct. It's an amazing feeling to be sitting on a train, and they have the speedometer, kind of up on the wall, and says you're going 176 kilometers an hour, and you can't, and you're looking out the window, and it's like everything is just like looking out my window right now in my house, and then all of a sudden, like you'll hit a tunnel or a bridge, and it'll go, it goes by so fast.
Yeah, you're moving that. Yeah, I could see the being the future of transportation in the United States for sure. I mean, the roads are packed. This would be very convenient, also for the corporate clients. I mean, if you travel by a train, you have your space. You can have your computer, you can have your Wi-Fi, you can have your coffee, you can have your lunch, and travel a couple hundred miles in comfort, and you can do your work if you wanted to. So I see that being definitely implemented. Obviously, it takes companies like ACWR to start the initiative, and I'm glad you're already putting the first step towards it, and that's can definitely be a good thing. Now, a company that has so much history, how do you guys approach innovation? I'm talking about artificial intelligence, maybe some robotics, automations. How are you implemented anything of the new wave of innovations into your part of the business?
That's really kind of a transportation operations question. Because I can tell you, in my world, kind of email is about as high tech as I get. But I know, in the rail world itself, there's all this these alternative fuels, from hydrogen to just straight electric. And of course, being the business development guy for the railroad, I'm kind of like the face of the railroad. So every vendor who has the next best widget, the next best anything, most of those emails come to me. And
Okay.
then I sort of farm them to our mechanicals or our operations, or sometimes just straight to our management team, because to me, kind of like you said, or kind of like you intimated, to me, they're all kind of neat, right? It's just to what degree uh, can we, as a small railroad, get into that? And I'm sure for us, it's all small bites, right? You just gotta you kind of pick something and you work at that, and then we'll go from there. But I no, can I quote you anything? Right off the top of my head, no.
I was
At
I
the end
was
of the
kind
day,
of
too. Oh,
I was
go
kind
ahead.
of expecting that answer, so I knew it's gonna be that answer, but I still wanted to
So
find out.
gave you the long answer to get to that result, but anyway. So.
But hey, everything is ahead of us. It's still new, so it's not like you're left behind. It's there's so much happening that I'm sure there will be some sort of innovations entering that's part two, and for I have no doubt. One thing I want to share before I ask you the next question is that I could see you being on that one of those entertaining trains and excursion trains you do, recording content from there, like for your business development role, and having maybe meetings on it. That would be pretty cool, especially if you have that opportunity. You guys do a bunch of events there. So there was one thought that stuck with me.
Yeah, we do have I've seen a video where we're kind of promoting our train for wedding events and those kinds of things, and I don't know if this was real or staged, but the video is mostly of people having a good time on the train, and it's a good sell. It's a real
Yeah,
good sell. So
I'm telling you, Paul. I mean, this will
definitely,
take
yeah.
over. This will take over social media if you're gonna record your calls and videos from the train. It doesn't have to be the excursion train. It can be even your commodity transportation train as well. So that content is just how you send out, and how this could get a lot of attention. Just a food for thought. But the question for you is: if you look back, you have decades of experience in business development. If you look back, if you sit across the table from young version of Paul, what would you advise him?
I would advise him that here's what I've learned. I've learned that all sales is relationship, right? It
Hmm.
is getting to know the person across from you, like yourself, and developing the skills to build and grow a relationship. And it's funny because the young me didn't know I had the skills that I today know that I have. Does that make sense? And that's what I would encourage myself. The younger me would be like, Paul, work it, man. You have it. I think I did that. When I look back, those skills that I had, I used them because that was all I had. I don't consider myself the smartest guy. I'm not going to dazzle you with a lot of technical stuff. Even when I was at Staylight, which was a very technical business in some aspects, dealt with a lot of engineers, dealt with a lot of architects. I remember one of my mentors telling me, uh, we were having a conversation about customer, and he was asking me questions and I was answering him, and I said, and Charles, I was really worried because I don't know nothing. He goes, Paul, you've forgotten more about lightweight aggregate than most people will ever know. Like, I thought about it quite that way.
Yeah.
And so really that's kind of, I would have liked to maybe at some point at a younger age grasp the fact that, hey, you know what you're doing, just work it, keep working it. And that's what I encourage any, I was fortunate at Staylight to have a team that, of older, shoot, 2 or 3 mentors in that group, as well as 2 or 3 young people that I got to bring in, and we created a team. And that's what I encourage them to do, is take their talents and maximize them. And for some, they're smart, right? For others, as they just got that personality, that ability to build relationships. And really it goes a long way, because, every day's not great, right? You have some issues sometimes. And when you have those relationships, it's a lot easier to to work through those issues than it is when you don't have them, and it can be confrontational sometimes. And so that's I don't know
So
if, but that's
identify your
exactly.
identify your strengths and then develop them further. Make sure that you build on your strengths. It starts with identifying what are your strengths. So having that real conversation with yourself, sitting down with yourself and finding out what are your strengths. That's something that we should all do, especially early stages. And also, it sounds like this skill, building relationships, being good with how we communicate and how we approach other human beings, is something that will be so unique and so niched moving forward, where everything is artificial intelligence. You have no idea if you're talking to a human being or if it's a robot, if it's a real person or not, who said what. Building relationships. And also, I was speaking, one of our previous guests was a lady who was in the clinical psychology industry for the last decade, 3 decades, I'm sorry, 3 or 4 even decades. And she said that everything is showing and indicating that we are the loneliest we've ever been in the time where social media is pretty much everything and everywhere. And we are the loneliest generation. Moving forward, the next generations are going to have it really, really hard time to build any relationship. So that's a skill that we should all definitely develop and promote and find ways to do it, because it's nowadays I feel like everyone gets super awkward around other human beings, especially after 2021, 2022. It feels like building relationship is so underrated. I mean, it builds companies, it turns cool stuff into entertainment. It has so much benefit for everyone if we do that. So thanks so much for sharing that lesson.
Yeah, I've heard.
Last question
I was
for
going to say
you.
I've heard the exact same thing that you were just talking about. I've heard that same thing, and it's sad, you know. So yeah, you know, interpersonal communication is still very important, and in my opinion, is probably the most important.
Absolutely, it's the key, and that's something that we should promote more than those social media there. Now, my last question for you, Paul, is there what's the exciting thing you look forward to in the future, in the near future? What's exciting for you?
Well, honestly, I have been with the railroad for, like I said, almost 7 years, kind of repeating myself. One of the things that I took me a little bit to figure it out, but the sales cycle in railroading is incredibly long. When I was in the aggregate business, I could sit down with you, and in an hour I could sell you a truckload of stone tomorrow. In this rail world, I have learned that you and I can have this conversation, and if I ship you a rail car in a year, it's like lightning speed. And so that's been a heck of a lesson, I guess you could say, for a guy who is, as my dad said, had 2 speeds, 100 miles an hour or stop. You know, and it's hard for me to not be 100 miles an hour or stop, you know. And so I have learned a lot of patience, I guess you could say. And and I have built, or I am working on some projects that have continued to churn, continue to develop. And quite frankly, I would like to see at least half of them could happen. And so, and there, you know, there's like 7 or 8 of them, and, you know, at least half of them go. You know, I got a lot of small victories, but there's, you know, everybody likes to swing for the fence, you know, and hit the big home run. I've hit some good singles, couple doubles. I'd like to get a triple or a home run or 2 going. And, you know, I'm still at bat swinging that baseball bat, but I haven't quite hit one yet, but they're there. So, you know, that's probably top of the list. You know, I still have 2 daughters at the house. I have 4 kids. 2 are adults and successful, and I got 2 more. One just graduated high school, but she's still here. And I got 1 more in high school, and I'd like to see them get grown and gone. And and then who knows? I just turned. I'm on the other, getting close to 62. We'll put it that way. Years old. People ask me, so retirement this, and I'm like, I don't know what retirement is. Don't believe in retirement. when Jennifer hired me to come to the railroad, we made a deal. We made a pact. I'll give her 20 years. And so I'm only 7 years in. So that gives me, and generally speaking, every year she'll send me on my anniversary, she'll send me an email. You owe me, this year will be, you owe me 13 years. And I'll be, yes, ma'am. I plan on keep working. And my goal from the day I started here was in 10 years, I wanted to double the car volume of the ACWR. We're not there yet, but like I said, those projects, if some of those dominoes were to fall all the way, we could definitely be there. And that's what gets me up in the morning and keeps me going. Uh, I love what I do. I love the people I work with, and we all are, we're all pulling the train in the same direction, and so that's exciting. Travel, so I do that and do a lot of that with her. And people say, "How do you go? How do you plan these trips?" I said, "No, my wife just puts it on the calendar and I show up. That's it." So. She's a
I
trip.
wish you many more trips and many more home runs, and I hope that content like this, you never know who's going to see it. Maybe it's going to help you to shorten that sales cycle, maybe even by a day or two at least. So hopefully you will be able to hit your goals. And you're still young in the company. It's a young member of the company, so you have 13 years to go. So there's a lot of room for improvement and growth, and I hope it's going to happen faster than you can imagine. With that, I wanted to say thank you, Paul, for hopping on. It was a fun conversation, taking us back in time. I look forward to seeing more content from you guys, more events, and hopefully I'll be invited or I'll show up to one of those events and take my family. That'll be fantastic.
We'd love to have you, and thank you for the opportunity. I hope I didn't just go off on too many tangents. This was interesting, and quite frankly, a little unnerving to do this interview, but it's been fun. I appreciate you. You did a good job.
You did great. Thank you.